My dear friend, this is not a message that stumbled into your life by accident. No. This is a divine interruption. Something meant to stop you in your tracks, make you lean in and hear every word. Because if you've ever wondered why trouble has had your name on it since you were a child, if you've ever asked yourself why it feels like life picked you out of the crowd just to test you, you've got to stay with me on this. Because by the time we're done, you'll understand that none of it was random. From the earliest days you can remember, it's been one battle after another. Struggles that seemed unfair, attacks that came out of nowhere, disappointments that cut deeper than they should. But I'm here to tell you, it's not coincidence. You've been targeted because you carry something the world can't explain and the enemy can't control. Even as a child, before you knew what it was, your purpose was visible in the spiritual realm. Your potential lit you up like a beacon. The enemy has been trying to put that light out from day one because it's the kind of light that changes things. But here's the promise. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And here's the guarantee. Every tear, every loss, every sleepless night, God will repay you double. So don't scroll past this. Don't let the moment pass. Type Sounded77 in the comments if you know this is for you. Like this video. Share it with someone who's been fighting battles they can't explain. Let's walk through this together. Because the fight you've been in all your life has never been about what you've done. It's been about who you are. Now, let's begin. From a young age, you probably noticed it, though you couldn't always explain it. You felt things other people didn't. You'd walk into a room and sense the mood before a word was spoken. You could pick up on energies, good or bad, like static in the air. While other kids were running around without a care, you were carrying this quiet awareness that the world was deeper, heavier, more layered than what everyone else seemed to see. You might not have had the language for it back then, but you knew something was different about you. Now, let me tell you, there's a cost to that kind of awareness. It's not just a gift, it's also a weight. Early on, it can feel like a burden because when you sense more, you feel more. And when you feel more, you see the cracks in the world long before anyone else admits they're there. That's why, from an early age, you might have felt out of place, like you were watching life from the outside, even while you were in the middle of it. Those moments, they weren't random. The attacks that came against you when you were still just figuring yourself out, they were strategic. Life was trying to shake you early, to throw you off balance before you could find your footing. The enemy knows it's easier to break someone before they realize their own strength. That's why those first years felt heavier than they should have. And yet, in the middle of that weight, there were signs. Subtle at first, but consistent. Almost like little notes left on your path to remind you you weren't walking it alone. Maybe it was a hawk circling above at a moment when you were deep in thought. Maybe it was the wind picking up around you when everything else was still. You might have brushed it off at the time, but I'm telling you now, those weren't coincidences. In Scripture, God has a way of speaking through His creation. Think about the moment Jesus was baptized. Matthew 3:16 tells us a dove descended on him as a sign of divine approval. That wasn't just for the people watching. It was for Jesus Himself. A confirmation of who He was and what He was here to do. In the same way, those hawks, that shift in the wind, those unexplainable moments, they've been your reminders. Hawks with that sharp vision aren't just birds, they're messengers. They represent seeing beyond the surface, spotting what others miss, and rising above limitations. Every time one showed up for you, it was as if the heavens were whispering, "Lift your head, look higher. Don't get stuck in what you can see. Trust in what you can't yet touch." And then there's the eagle. Isaiah 40:31 says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." You were made to soar, not scrape by, not settle for the ground when you were designed for the sky. But here's the truth. Learning to fly takes trust. You've got to trust the wind you can't see, and you've got to leave the safety of what you know. Those signs weren't just comfort. They were preparation. See, I believe those moments are tests as much as they are encouragements. They ask you, are you willing to believe before you see? Are you willing to move before you know how it's going to work out? That's faith in its purest form. Not when everything is laid out neatly, but when all you've got is a nudge in your spirit and a sign in your path. Think back. How many times has your life been shaped by those little nudges? How many times did something or someone remind you that you were seen, you were known, even when you felt invisible to the rest of the world? That's not luck. That's not accident. That's the evidence that you've been under watch since day one, and because of that, your energy has always stood out. You've probably noticed how some people are drawn to you without knowing why. They're pulled in by the warmth you carry, the way you make a room feel different just by being in it. But if you've lived long enough, you've also seen the flip side. People who seem uncomfortable in your presence, who treat your light like it's something dangerous. I'll tell you why. Light exposes. It reveals what's hidden, and not everybody's ready for that. Sometimes your very presence makes people see things in themselves they've been avoiding. That's why they react the way they do. Not because you've done them wrong, but because you've made them see. That's why I'm telling you, don't you dare dim your light to make someone else comfortable. Your calling is too high for that. Every sign you've been given, every hawk, every breeze, every divine moment, it's been telling you to rise, to lift above the noise, to step into the airspace where only the eagles go. If you feel like you don't belong, like you're out of place or hard to place, remember, maybe you weren't meant to fit in. Maybe you were meant to be set apart. In the Bible, David was just a shepherd boy, the youngest son. So overlooked that when the prophet came to anoint a king, his own father didn't even call him into the room. But while others saw a boy in the field, God saw a king in the making. And Joseph? His own brothers couldn't stand him, not because he did anything wrong, but because he dared to dream, because he saw visions that were too big for their comfort zones. His favor offended them, but no prison, no betrayal, no pit could stop what God had planned. You see, God's never been in the business of choosing the obvious. He's in the business of choosing the anointed. So, if you've spent years questioning why you felt different, why you've been singled out, this is your answer. You're not ordinary. You never were. The signs have been telling you that all along. You've been called to rise above the limits others try to place on you. And the reason the attacks came early is because the enemy saw your potential before you did. I've lived long enough to know this. When God marks you, the world feels it. Some will celebrate it. Others will push back against it. But none of them can erase it. That's why you've got to keep your eyes open. Notice the signs. Pay attention to the ways the world around you confirms what your spirit already knows. Because those signs, they're not just about where you've been. They're about where you're going. And if you're willing to trust them, to follow them, to rise when you're called to rise, you'll find yourself living in the very purpose you were made for. So the next time you see that hawk, or feel that wind shift, or get that sense deep in your chest that you're not alone, stop. Take it in. That's your reminder. You've been chosen. You've been seen. And no matter what has come against you, you were never meant to stay grounded. You were made to soar. My dear friend, I know, even when you're not trying to be noticed, people around you still notice you. Not because you're putting on a show, not because you're demanding attention, but because there's something in you that can't be hidden. That's what I call a magnetic presence. It's not about looks, it's not about money, it's about light. And light has a way of drawing people in. Now, here's the thing about that kind of light. It will attract two kinds of people. There will be those who are drawn to it, the ones who feel safe around you, who feel encouraged just by being in your presence. They can't always explain it, but they feel better when you're near. You lift them without even opening your mouth. But then, there are the others. The ones who look at that same light and feel something else. Something that makes them uneasy. Sometimes it's jealousy. Sometimes it's insecurity. Sometimes it's fear. But it's all rooted in the same truth. Your light reveals what they'd rather keep hidden. And when someone isn't ready to deal with their own shadows, they'll try to dim yours. Not because you've done them wrong, but because you've reminded them of something in themselves they've been avoiding. You've made them see a higher standard, a deeper truth, a clearer way, and they're not ready for it. That's not new. Look at Joseph in Genesis 37. All he did was share the dreams God gave him. Dreams that painted a picture of his future. His brothers heard those dreams, and instead of celebrating him, they hated him for it. They couldn't see that his dreams weren't an attack on them. They were a calling on his life. But jealousy blinds people. And when people can't see your heart, they'll misinterpret your vision. I've seen it in my own life. You carry something inside you that others don't understand, and instead of asking about it, instead of trying to learn from it, they turn against it. But just like Joseph, the opposition you face doesn't cancel your calling. It confirms it. If you were going nowhere, nobody would bother trying to stop you. Sometimes, to help people understand the uniqueness in them, I've seen folks look at it through the lens of the stars. Now, I'm not talking about replacing God with astrology. No, I'm talking about using the language people know to help them see the gifts they carry. If you're an Aquarius, the water bearer, you've got the gift of vision. You're wired to see possibilities before they're even on the horizon. You've got the ability to pour out ideas that refresh people, just like water refreshes the body. That's a dangerous gift in the eyes of those who like things to stay the same, because you challenge their comfort zone. Or maybe you're a Gemini. You've got this ability to bridge two worlds. You can navigate the practical and the spiritual, the seen and the unseen, without getting lost in either. You can stand in the middle and translate the wisdom of one realm into the language of the other. That's a rare skill. It reminds me of Solomon. He had the wisdom to connect heaven's insight to earth's decisions. And that wisdom, like your gift, isn't for show. It's for impact. But here's what you need to know. Whether you see yourself in those analogies or not, your purpose was written into you before you even took your first breath. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That means you were marked before you had a name. Your design wasn't an accident. And because it's divine, it can't be undone by human opinion. That's why the opposition hasn't been able to erase you. Yes, they've thrown stones. Yes, they've tried to slow you down. Yes, there were moments they made you question yourself. But you're still here. That's not by luck. That's by design. External forces can press you, distract you, even wound you, but they can't touch the essence of who you are. If anything, those challenges have only made you stronger. Think about it. Hasn't every setback forced you to dig deeper? Hasn't every betrayal taught you something about discernment? Hasn't every delay made you more patient, more focused, more determined? That's what happens when you refuse to let pain have the last word. You turn it into fuel. I've met people who think opposition is a sign they're on the wrong path. But I'm here to tell you, it's the opposite. Resistance is proof you're moving. Nobody tries to stop a parked car. The enemy doesn't bother with people who pose no threat to his plans. But when you're carrying light, when you're carrying vision, when you're carrying something that can shift the atmosphere, you're going to face resistance. And when that resistance comes, remember Joseph again. Every attempt to take him down only moved him closer to the palace. His brothers thought they were burying him. They were actually planting him. That's how God works. He'll use the very hands that tried to harm you to position you for the place He's been preparing you for. So if you've felt the sting of being misunderstood, if you've seen people walk away without explanation, if you've been on the receiving end of jealousy you didn't earn, don't shrink back. Don't apologize for the light you carry. Don't let bitterness creep in. Keep shining, because the ones who are meant to walk with you will be drawn to that light. And the ones who can't handle it were never meant to carry the weight of your calling. The more you live, the more you'll see that your journey isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about being faithful to the one who gave you the gift in the first place. And that means you keep going, even when the applause is silent and the room is empty. It means you measure your progress not by who approves, but by whether you're still walking in alignment with your purpose. Ask yourself, have these challenges made you weaker, or have they made you wiser? Has the opposition diminished your resolve, or has it deepened it? Every fire you've walked through has refined you. Every storm you've survived has proven your resilience. Every loss you've endured has clarified what truly matters. That's not weakness. That's strength being forged. And here's the part I want you to hold on to. Your light isn't just for you. It's not a private treasure. It's a public testimony. It's the way God reaches people through your life. That's why it's worth protecting. That's why it's worth enduring the seasons of misunderstanding and pushback. Because at the end of the day, your calling isn't up for a vote. It's already been decided. It was decided before you took your first step. And no matter who tries to stand in the way, they can't erase what heaven has written. So walk in it, own it, live it without apology. Let the ones who are meant to be inspired by you draw near, and let the ones who are threatened fall away. Your job isn't to convince them. It's to be who you were always meant to be. And every time you choose to stand in that truth, every time you let your light shine in the face of darkness, You're not just surviving. You're fulfilling the purpose you were born with. You see, there are moments in life when you look back and realize that the story didn't start where you thought it did. Many people believe their life began when they first succeeded, when the world finally took notice. But the truth is, your preparation began long before you had an audience. Long before your name was ever spoken in rooms you didn't even know existed. For some of you, it began in the shadows of your earliest days. Those moments of feeling like you didn't belong. When you walked into a room and sensed you were different. Maybe you didn't understand why you were so quiet when others were loud. Why your heart carried a weight you couldn't explain. Why you felt like an outsider in your own home, in your own family, in your own world. That isolation, that early doubt wasn't random. It was strategic. The enemy saw something in you before you even saw it in yourself. He recognized the seed God had planted in you before you were even aware of it. And because he couldn't destroy the seed once God spoke it into existence, he tried to surround it with weeds. Lies about your worth, questions about your identity, and whispers that you would never fit in. Those feelings you carried in childhood, those nights you laid in bed wondering why you were different, they weren't proof of weakness. They were proof of calling. The Bible gives us a clear example of this in the life of Moses. Long before Moses stood before Pharaoh and declared, "Let my people go," he was just a baby, unaware of the war being waged over his life. Pharaoh had issued a decree in Exodus 1 that all Hebrew male infants be killed. The enemy saw the threat before Moses even took his first steps. But God had already arranged a plan. Moses' mother hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer conceal him, she placed him in a basket and set him among the reeds of the Nile. That baby floated into the arms of Pharaoh's own daughter, into the palace of the very man who wanted him dead. Think about that for a moment. The enemy targeted Moses before he could speak, before he could think, before he could choose. Yet divine protection wrapped around him in such a way that he was raised in the house of his enemy, educated by the very system that sought to destroy him. And when the time came, the same Moses they had underestimated became the deliverer of a nation. What am I saying? I'm saying your early life wasn't a mistake. I'm saying the battles you faced before you even knew how to fight were God's way of proving that His hand was already on you. Many of you have been through that same silent war. You felt the attacks before you even understood their source. People overlooked you, underestimated you, even tried to break your spirit before you could fully rise. But here's the part they didn't see. You survived. You endured. You walked through fires that were meant to consume you, and you came out not smelling like smoke. You learned to adapt, to hold on, to keep moving even when the ground beneath you felt unstable. That resilience you carry today, it didn't come from comfort. It came from survival. And survival is never wasted in the kingdom of God. Malachi 3:3 tells us that God will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. The refining fire is not punishment, it's preparation. When a silversmith refines silver, he heats it until the impurities rise to the surface, skimming them away until only the pure metal remains. And do you know when he knows it's ready? When he can see his reflection in it. That's what God's been doing in you since the beginning. Every trial, every heartbreak, every lonely season, He's been turning up the heat, not to destroy you, but to reveal Himself in you. When you felt abandoned, He was refining your trust. When you were betrayed, He was purifying your understanding of loyalty. When you were overlooked, He was strengthening your confidence in His timing instead of man's approval. The refiner's fire isn't easy, and it's not quick, but it is precise. God knows exactly how much heat you can handle, exactly how long to keep you there, and exactly when to bring you out, shining brighter than before. The enemy underestimated you because he didn't account for the protection surrounding you. You weren't walking alone. Not then, not now. From the moment you were born, God assigned spiritual allies to your life. Angels that stood guard when you didn't even know danger was near. Doors that were shut because they would have led you to destruction. Friendships that ended because they would have diluted your calling. You may have cried over the losses, but heaven was celebrating the preservation. Some of you have been spared from things you'll never even know about. Accidents you missed by seconds. Relationships that collapsed before they could break you. Opportunities you thought you wanted, but would have pulled you off the path God intended. You were being guided, even in your wandering. And if you look back closely, you can trace the thread of His faithfulness weaving through every season of your life. So yes, you've been through storms, but you were also sheltered in ways you couldn't see. The refiner's fire shaped you, but divine protection sustained you. And both were necessary for who you're becoming. You're not here by accident. You're not breathing today because the enemy let you live. You're here because you belong to God. I want you to think about the moments in your early life that hurt the most. The times you questioned if you were loved, if you mattered, if you belonged anywhere. Now I want you to imagine those same moments from heaven's perspective. Imagine God looking at you then, knowing the plans He had for you, knowing the strength you would carry, knowing the people you would help because of the pain you endured. What looked like isolation to you looked like insulation to Him, shielding you until the time was right to release you into your purpose. This is why you can't despise the fire. It's why you can't curse the seasons that stripped you bare. Because those were the seasons that proved the enemy could bruise you, but he couldn't bury you. He could push you, but he couldn't break you. Every scar you carry is a testimony that you made it through what was meant to end you. And maybe you don't feel like you're fully out of the fire yet. Maybe you're still in that place where the heat is high, where you're wondering if God is ever going to pull you out. If that's you, hear me. He hasn't forgotten you. He's watching the whole process. He knows exactly when to bring you forth so that when the world sees you, they'll see Him in your reflection. From the very start, you've been prepared in ways you didn't understand, for purposes you couldn't yet imagine. You were chosen, protected, refined, and strengthened. Not just for your own sake, but for the lives you're going to impact. The enemy saw the threat in you early, but God saw the promise, and His promise always prevails. Let's talk about something most people don't like to admit. When you're chosen, you don't get to walk through life unnoticed. You don't get to slip by without resistance. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because heaven has stamped something on your life that hell can't ignore. When God calls you, it's not a whisper to the world. It's a declaration in the spirit realm. And the moment that declaration goes out, the trials begin, not to destroy you, but to shape you, to prove you, to confirm the destiny that's already written over your life. Being chosen doesn't mean it's going to be easy. David wasn't anointed and then immediately sitting on a throne. No, he went back to tending sheep. He faced lions, he faced bears, and eventually, he faced Goliath. Each trial, each test, was preparing him for the day when he would lead a nation. That's the reality of a divine calling. God's not in a hurry. He knows the weight of what He's placing in your hands, and He's going to make sure you're ready to carry it. Paul said it like this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4:8. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. Do you feel that? That's the life of someone with purpose. You might be pressed, you might feel the pressure closing in from every side, but you're not destroyed. Why? Because the hand of God is holding you steady. The enemy might think he's breaking you, but all he's doing is confirming who you are. Trials have a way of exposing two things: the weakness in us that needs to be surrendered to God, and the strength in us that's already been planted there by Him. Every adversity becomes a mirror, showing you both where you still need to grow and where you've already been made strong. That's why you can't despise the trial. If you only see it as punishment, you'll miss the refinement it's bringing. I know it's not easy to look at pain and call it preparation. It's not easy to feel misunderstood, overlooked, or under attack and still say, God, thank you for trusting me with this. But that's exactly what's happening. He trusts you with the weight of the trial because He knows it's shaping you into the person who can handle the blessing. A calling without preparation would crush you. A mission without endurance would overwhelm you. So He allows the fire to refine you before He releases you into the fullness of your purpose. Look at the pattern in Scripture. Joseph had a dream, but before he ever stood in Pharaoh's court, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Moses was called to lead Israel, but before he ever stood before Pharaoh, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. And Jesus Himself, before His ministry began, was led into the desert to be tested. If the chosen ones in the Bible had to walk through trials before stepping into their mission, why would we think it would be any different for us? You've got to see this. Your trials are not random. They're not wasted. They're tailored. God knows exactly what each one is producing in you. That financial hardship? It's teaching you to trust in Jehovah Jireh, your provider. That betrayal? It's teaching you to lean on the one who will never leave you or forsake you. That closed door? It's redirecting you to the door He's already prepared for you to walk through. And when you come out on the other side, you won't just have a title or a position, you'll have a testimony. You'll carry an authority that only comes from surviving the fire. People will listen to you, not because you speak loudly, but because they can sense you've been somewhere they haven't yet walked. They'll feel the weight of your words, because those words were forged in the furnace of affliction. That's why, when you're chosen, you have to stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Prepare me." Because the question is never if God can use you. The question is if you'll allow Him to mold you, even when it hurts. And when you start to see the trial as a teacher, as proof of the purpose you carry, something shifts. You stop resenting the process and you start respecting it. David didn't kill Goliath because he suddenly found courage in that moment. He killed Goliath because the trials before had already built courage into him. The sling in his hand was familiar because he'd used it before. The faith in his heart was solid because he'd seen God deliver him before. That's the quiet work trials do. They equip you for victories you don't even know you're going to need yet. So if you're in the middle of something right now, if you feel pressed, overlooked, or stretched to your limit, hear me. You're not being buried. You're being planted. The soil is dark, the pressure is real, but the growth is inevitable. The same God who anointed David while he was still a shepherd is the same God who sees your potential before anyone else does. And if he called you, he will finish what he started. You might be in the proving ground right now, but this is not your permanent address. You're passing through the place of preparation on your way to the place of purpose. And when you get there, you'll understand why the trials had to be so specific, why the fire had to be so hot, and why the wait had to be so long. Because everything you went through will have equipped you for everything you're about to step into. And when that day comes, you'll be able to look back and say, every trial was worth it, because it brought me here. From the very first breath you took, God had already placed within you every tool you would ever need to fulfill the assignment He prepared for your life. You were not sent into this world empty-handed. You were sent fully equipped, though you may not have realized it yet. That is the foresight of God. He does not create a life and then scramble to find a purpose for it. No. He shapes the purpose first, and then He breathes life into the person who will carry it. Before you ever cried your first cry, before you ever opened your eyes to see the light of this world, heaven had already whispered over you, it is finished. Every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage, every measure of endurance you would need, it was embedded into your very being. You see, when God calls you, He doesn't simply give you an invitation and leave you to figure it out. He furnishes you for the journey. That's why there are things inside you that you didn't even know were there, until life's pressure brought them to the surface. There are abilities, gifts, and strengths that will only reveal themselves in the moment they are needed, because God placed them deep within you for such a time as this. This is not something you picked up along the way. It is something you've carried from the very beginning. The foresight of God is perfect. He knew the paths you would walk, the battles you would face, and the storms you would have to endure. And so He packed your soul like a soldier's kit, ready for war, ready for the wilderness, ready for the work. The Word reminds us of this truth in Proverbs 24:16. For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. That's not just about resilience. It's about divine design. The reason you rise again is because there is something in you that refuses to stay down. It is not just willpower, it is God power. You are carrying the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead, as Romans 8:11 declares. Think about that for a moment. The very Spirit that rolled away the stone that called life back into the body of our Savior is alive in you. That means no matter how hard life tries to bury you, no matter how final your failures seem, resurrection is in your DNA. Falling is temporary. Rising is inevitable. And here's the thing. This is not just about you. This is about the ancient wisdom and inheritance that has been passed down through generations, flowing through your bloodline, resting in your spirit. Long before you walked this earth, prayers were spoken over you by people you've never met. Your grandmother's faith, your grandfather's endurance, the courage of ancestors who stood in the face of storms and refused to bow. They have all been woven into your spiritual fabric. You are not starting from nothing. You are standing on the shoulders of those who came before you. The spiritual inheritance you carry is not only what you've learned in your lifetime, it is the accumulated wisdom of generations, stored within you like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. The enemy knows this. That is why his attacks often start early, before you even know who you are, before you understand the power that's in you. He tries to confuse identity before it's discovered, to dim the light before it's recognized, to plant seeds of fear before faith has a chance to bloom. Some of you have faced battles in your youth that you didn't understand at the time. You thought it was bad luck or just the way life was. But in truth, the enemy saw something in you that you hadn't yet seen in yourself. He recognized the anointing before you did. He saw the calling before you could even name it. So he tried to cut it off at the root, to suppress your gifts before they had the chance to grow. But here's what he didn't count on: divine protection. Even in your most vulnerable moments, God was there, shielding you from what could have destroyed you. You may have walked through the fire, but it did not consume you. You may have faced the mouths of lions, but like Daniel, you were not touched. Daniel 6:22 says, "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me." That is your story. There are dangers you didn't even know you passed through because God's hand was covering you. There are traps that were set for you that never caught you because his angels were already dismantling them before you arrived. Think about the times when you should have lost your way, when you should have been overtaken by fear, when you should have been swallowed by despair. But you weren't. Not because you were strong enough, but because you were covered. Covered by prayers you didn't hear. Covered by grace you didn't deserve. Covered by a purpose too important to be abandoned. You are still here because you are still needed. And not just needed in some vague, general sense. You are needed for something specific, something precise, something heaven tailored for your hands alone. And maybe you've questioned why certain gifts seem hidden, why certain abilities haven't shown themselves yet. It's because God reveals them in His timing, not yours. Some of the wisdom you carry is dormant until the appointed season. It is like a seed in the ground. There is no sign of life on the surface. But underground, the roots are growing deep, preparing to break through the soil. God knows when to bring it forth. He knows the exact moment when the world will need what He placed in you. So don't mistake delay for absence. What is in you is real, and it is waiting for the right moment to be seen. When you understand that you've been equipped from the very beginning, you start to walk differently. You carry yourself with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they are not empty-handed. You stop comparing yourself to others because you realize God didn't make a mistake with you. You stop panicking when the path ahead looks uncertain because you know you've been furnished for the journey. And you start to see every challenge as an opportunity to draw out the strength that's been there all along. I want you to picture Daniel in that lion's den, not pacing, not panicking, but trusting. He knew his protection didn't come from his own ability to fight lions. He knew it came from the God who sent His angel to shut their mouths. That's the same God who has been shutting the mouths of the lions in your life, the critics, the enemies, the spiritual forces that sought to devour you. You have survived not because you were untouchable, but because you were untouchable to the wrong hands. The truth is, the enemy can't take what God has sealed. He can't steal what God has marked as yours. And he can't erase what God has written into your DNA. Let's think about Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty, marked by abuse, rejected by those who should have protected her. By every worldly standard, she should have been silenced. But buried beneath the pain was a seed, planted long before the spotlight ever found her. Even as a little girl, she carried something sacred. The ability to speak with soul-level honesty, to see people not just with her eyes, but with her spirit. That gift was there before she had a platform, before she had a plan. And no matter how many times life tried to bury her, that seed refused to die. Why? Because God had already equipped her with empathy, with presence, with a voice that could pierce through noise and reach hearts. And in time, what once looked like brokenness became the very bridge that connected her to millions. Every gift, every ounce of strength, every piece of wisdom is still intact. Some of it has been tested, some of it has been sharpened, some of it is still unfolding, but all of it is yours. And when the time comes, you will see that you were never lacking. So hold your head high, not out of arrogance, but out of gratitude, because you know what it took to get here. You know the battles you fought, the nights you've cried, the doubts you've wrestled with. And you know that through it all, God has been faithful. You have been equipped from the beginning. You have been protected in the middle. And you will be victorious in the end. That's not just my opinion. That's the promise of God. You are the living proof that what He plants, He sustains, that what He calls, He equips, and that what He protects, He carries all the way to completion. You were made ready before you even knew you'd need to be. And when you finally step into the fullness of what's been placed inside you, the world will see what heaven already knew. You were built for this. There are those of you living in this world who don't even realize why the battle for survival is so fierce. You've been asking yourself, why me? Why is there always another storm? Why does it feel like the opposition never takes a break? And here's the truth. It's because your calling isn't ordinary. You weren't placed here just to get a paycheck, pay bills, and repeat the cycle. You were born to confront the darkness that has been running through generations. You were designed to break chains that have been accepted as just the way it is. You were built to disrupt the systems of bondage the enemy thought he could keep in place forever. That's why the fight has been so personal. That's why you've been under attack since before you even knew you had a purpose. The enemy has studied your bloodline. He knows the patterns. He's seen the weaknesses, the struggles, the generational curses that have been passed down like family heirlooms. But when God called you, He said, "Enough is enough. This one will not bow to the same chains. This one will not repeat the same cycles." Your very existence is a threat to the kingdom of darkness because your obedience has the power to set people free who don't even know they're in prison. You need to understand that your life is not random. The talents you have, the compassion you carry, the resilience you've built, those are not accidents. They're weapons. They are the tools God placed inside you to wage war against the schemes that have kept your family, your community, even whole regions bound. And you have to know, the enemy fears you more than you realize. He fears what will happen when you step fully into who God made you to be. He fears your voice when it speaks truth in a world comfortable with lies. He fears your example when you walk in holiness in a culture that celebrates compromise. He fears your leadership when you decide you're not going to follow the crowd, but lead them to freedom. Because your success isn't just about you. Your breakthrough would dismantle his carefully built structures of control. One person who refuses to bow to darkness can shift the entire atmosphere. That's why your warfare has been relentless. The attacks weren't random, they were strategic. But what the enemy didn't account for was the fact that God already knew every scheme, every trap, every ambush. And He already made a way for you to stand. God has a way of sending His assurance right when you're questioning your capacity. Remember what He told Moses in Exodus 3:12. I will be with you. That was the promise. Not I'll make it easy, not I'll remove all opposition, but I will be with you. And when the God who spoke the universe into existence says He will be with you, that means you can walk into the darkest valley without losing your footing. That means you can face enemies that outnumber you without trembling, because you're not standing in your own strength. You are backed by the full authority of heaven. His presence isn't a vague idea. It's the fire that goes before you, the shield that covers you, the voice that whispers strategy when you don't know what to do. Some of you have been trying to figure out why God chose you for this fight. You look at your life and think, I'm not strong enough. I'm not holy enough. I'm not qualified. But leadership in the kingdom doesn't start with perfection. It starts with obedience. Look at Joshua. He wasn't just given the title of leader, he was given a mission to lead the people into the promise God had made generations earlier. And that promise wasn't just about land. It was about identity. It was about breaking the mindset of slavery that had held God's people captive for 400 years. Joshua's role was to take a people who had been wandering, doubting, and sometimes rebelling, and show them what it looked like to trust God completely. You've been called to do the same thing in your own sphere of influence. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your workplace. Maybe it's the next generation looking at you to see if this faith thing really works. You are the Joshua in someone's story, and the way you walk will determine whether they cross into their promised land. That's why you can't give in to discouragement. That's why you can't play small to make other people comfortable. Leaders aren't called to blend in, they're called to step out. When Joshua took command, God didn't tell him the battles would be simple. He told him to be strong and courageous, because every step he took was going to be contested. But God also promised that no one would be able to stand against him all the days of his life. That same assurance rests on you. You are not walking into this battle unarmed. You are not stepping into this mission hoping for the best. Heaven has already written the outcome. And here's what the Word says about that outcome. No darkness, no demon, no generational curse can revoke what God has ordained. You need to get that in your spirit today. Your victory is not pending, it's established. It may not have manifested yet, but in the courts of heaven, the verdict has already been declared in your favor. The fight you're in now isn't about whether you win. It's about whether you'll hold your position until the victory breaks through in the natural. And I know holding your position isn't easy. It means standing firm when everything in you wants to run. It means believing when you have no evidence. It means praising when you feel surrounded. But every time you choose to stand, you are proving to the enemy that you are exactly who God said you are, a warrior built for this moment. Some of you are on the edge of giving up because the battle has been longer than you expected. You've prayed, you've fasted, you've done everything you know to do, and it still feels like the opposition is pressing in. But hear me, long battles often precede historic victories. What you're fighting now will become the testimony that strengthens someone else to fight tomorrow. You're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every person connected to your obedience. You're fighting for children who haven't been born yet, for families who don't even know your name, for communities that will never be the same because you decided to stand. And let me remind you, God never sends his people into battle without first securing the victory. He doesn't call you to face darkness, hoping you'll figure it out along the way. He equips you with spiritual weapons that are divinely powerful to demolish strongholds. He gives you discernment to see through deception. He surrounds you with his angels, and he fills you with the Holy Spirit. So you are never relying on your own strength. That's why the enemy can't take you out. You are carrying something he cannot destroy. Now here's the truth. Stepping into this mission will cost you. There will be moments when you have to walk away from comfort to step into calling. There will be times when you have to speak truth, knowing it might offend. There will be nights when you cry out to God asking, "Why did you choose me for this?" But when you remember that this isn't just about your life, it's about God's kingdom advancing, you'll find strength you didn't know you had. You'll stop measuring your worth by how easy the road is, and you'll start measuring it by how faithful you are to the assignment. I'm telling you right now, you were built for this. Every season of pressure, every wilderness, every closed door, every delay, it was training. You've been in a spiritual boot camp. And whether you realized it or not, God has been forging a warrior's heart in you. And now, he's releasing you into the mission you were born for. To disrupt darkness. To be the one who walks into rooms and shifts the atmosphere. To be the one who speaks life into places that have been echoing with death. To be the one who carries the light so fiercely that shadows flee without you even raising your voice. So take courage. Stand tall. Remember who's with you. The God who called Moses, the God who empowered Joshua, the God who conquered death itself. That God is walking with you into this fight. And because he is with you, you cannot lose. Let me tell you something that many of you already know deep in your bones. Pain rarely comes from the places you expect it. Most of the time, the deepest wounds in your life don't come from strangers on the street, people you've never met, or enemies who have been against you from day one. No, the wounds that cut the deepest often come from the people you love the most, from the ones who were supposed to protect you, stand beside you, and cover your back. They come from those whose hands you once held, whose voices you once trusted, whose presence you once thought was safe. And that's why betrayal feels like it takes the air right out of your lungs. It's not just the act itself. It's the place it came from. Because when someone you've poured yourself into, your time, your love, your trust, turns around and uses that closeness against you, the sting is sharper, the impact heavier. If you've ever been betrayed by family, by a spouse, by a friend, by someone in your inner circle, then you know it's not just a break in trust, it's a break in the soul. The enemy knows this. He knows he can't always get to you from the outside. Sometimes your defenses are too strong for an open attack. You're guarded, you're prayerful, you're watchful for threats. So what does he do? He tries to come through the people you've let closest to your heart. He'll use a relationship to shake your spirit. He'll use someone's weakness to exploit your strength. And it's not always because they're evil. It's because the enemy sees a doorway through their actions, their insecurity, or their brokenness. That's how he works. He knows that if he can get someone you love to hurt you, it'll echo louder than any insult from a stranger. But here's what you need to understand. Betrayal is not the end of you. Betrayal is often the beginning of a different version of you. the version that God has been trying to prepare all along. Sometimes it takes that shaking, that heartbreak, that moment when you're standing there saying, I never thought they would do that to me, for God to strip away illusions and show you where He is taking you. Think about Joseph. Genesis 50:20 records his words to the very brothers who sold him into slavery, the same brothers who plotted to erase him from their lives. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Let that sink in. The betrayal was real. The wound was real. The years in prison were real. But so was the purpose. So was the refining. So was the elevation that came afterward. Joseph didn't just survive his brother's betrayal, he was shaped by it. And when the time came, he could look at them with clear eyes and see the bigger picture. Maybe that's what God is doing in your life right now. Maybe the betrayal you faced wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you into a purpose you couldn't have reached any other way. Sometimes God will let people walk out of your life, not because you weren't worthy of their loyalty, but because you were worthy of a greater assignment. And that assignment required you to walk without the weight of people who couldn't see your value. You see, scars tell stories. Every scar you carry, whether physical or invisible, is a reminder of where you've been and proof that you made it through. That cut may have been deep, but it didn't end you. That wound may have slowed you down, but it didn't stop you. Every trauma, every heartbreak, every tear-stained pillow has been a stepping stone, moving you closer to the person you're meant to be. And here's the thing about scars. They don't just remind you of pain, they remind you of healing. They say, yes, I was hurt here, but I'm still here. The enemy wants you to see betrayal as final. He wants you to keep replaying the moment it happened, the words they said, the knife they stuck in your back. He wants you to stay stuck in that scene so you can never move into the next chapter. But God is whispering something else. Child, I will use even this. I will make even this work for your good. Romans 8:37 says, in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. That means betrayal doesn't get the last word. That means heartbreak doesn't get to write your ending. But here's the part that's hard to swallow. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are part of God's refining process. Refinement is not comfortable. Refinement is fire. And fire doesn't just warm. It burns away the things that can't go with you into the next season. You may think you lost a relationship, but what you really lost was the weight that would have slowed you down. You may think you lost a friend, but what you really lost was the distraction that would have kept you from hearing God clearly. So, how do you walk through betrayal without letting it turn you bitter? You start by putting it in God's hands. You say, Lord, this hurts more than I can explain, but I believe you're doing something in me that's bigger than this pain. And you choose, yes, you choose to trust His plan over your feelings. Because feelings will tell you to fight back, to prove yourself, to make them regret what they did. But faith says, I don't have to fight for my own name. God is my defender. Let me ask you, have you ever looked back at something that broke you at the time and realized it was actually the best thing that could have happened? That's what God does with betrayal. He turns what the enemy meant for harm into the very thing that positions you for blessing. That's why Joseph could stand before his brothers without bitterness. That's why you will be able to look back one day and say, it had to happen. If it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am today. Don't mistake the refinement for rejection. You are not being cast aside. You are being prepared. You're being shaped into someone stronger, wiser, and more anchored in God's truth than you've ever been. And when you come out on the other side, you won't just be healed. You'll be able to help heal others, because you'll know what it feels like to be broken and rebuilt. You'll know how to speak to someone else's pain, because you've lived through it yourself. Some of you are still in that place right now. You're standing in the middle of the betrayal, and all you can see is what you lost. All you can feel is the sting of what they did. But I promise you, if you keep walking, if you keep trusting, if you keep leaning into God instead of pulling away, there will come a day when you'll see the purpose behind the pain. Your scars will become your strength. Your story will become someone else's survival guide. And you'll realize that betrayal was not the end of your story. It was the refining fire that made your faith unshakable. So hold your head up, wipe your tears, and remember this: what they did may have wounded you, but it will not define you. The enemy may have used someone close to hurt you, but God is closer still, and His hands are on your life. You are more than a conqueror. You are not just a survivor. You are a testimony in the making. There comes a moment in life when holding on is no longer strength. It's a slow death. Some of you have been clutching memories that have already walked out the door. Relationships that have already said their last goodbye. And failures that have already written their final chapter. And yet, you grip them tighter, as if keeping them in your hands will somehow change what happened. But hear me when I tell you, there is a freedom you will never taste until you open your hands and let go. Letting go is not weakness. Letting go is not surrendering to defeat. Letting go is the bold declaration that you will no longer allow yesterday to dictate the quality of your tomorrow. When God calls you forward, He's not asking you to drag the chains of the past behind you. He's asking you to leave them at His feet. He's asking you to trust Him with the things you can't understand and the questions you may never get answered. Letting go is an act of trust. It's saying, Lord, I don't know why it happened. I don't know why it hurt this bad. But I believe you have something ahead of me that's greater than what I've lost. And in that moment, the weight shifts. The heaviness starts to lift. Because the truth is, what you release creates room for what God will restore. I know it's not easy. I'm not talking about letting go of something that barely touched your heart. I'm talking about the kind of wounds that leave you gasping for breath in the middle of the night. The kind of betrayal that makes you question your own worth. The kind of trauma that replays in your mind, like an uninvited guest that won't leave. But I've learned something. Healing is an act of rebellion. Yes, rebellion. Because the enemy's greatest desire is to keep you broken, bitter, and bound. To keep you in cycles of mistrust, self-sabotage, and despair. But every time you choose to heal, you're defying hell itself. You're saying, I will not be a prisoner to my pain. I will not let what was meant to destroy me define me. And this isn't just about patching up wounds. This is about becoming stronger at the broken places. You see, when God heals, He doesn't just stitch you back together the way you were before. He fortifies you. He makes you resilient in ways you couldn't have been without the breaking. It's not just about getting over it. It's about rising from it. That's why some of the most powerful voices in this world are the ones that have been through the deepest valleys. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before the world knew her name, before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, she was a single mother living on welfare, struggling with depression, wondering if she had anything left to give. She had a manuscript in her hands, but more than a dozen publishers turned it down. Most people would have taken that as a final answer. Most would have said, maybe this dream just isn't for me. But she kept writing. She kept showing up. She chose healing over hopelessness, creativity over collapse. And what happened? The very words she wrote in her darkest season became the light that millions of readers around the world now hold dear. That's what healing does. It turns your private pain into a public beacon. Maybe you don't have a novel inside you. Maybe your story isn't for a bookstore shelf. But you have something the world needs. You have scars that can speak to someone else's wounds. You have wisdom that was forged in the fire. And the moment you decide to release the past, that wisdom becomes usable. God doesn't waste pain. He recycles it into purpose. But you can't see that purpose while you're still staring at the ashes. Let me tell you something. Sometimes holding on feels safer than letting go, because at least holding on is familiar. Even if it hurts, at least you know its shape. But God's healing is going to require you to step into unfamiliar territory. You're going to have to walk without the crutch you've been leaning on. You're going to have to trust that His hands are big enough to carry both your past and your future. And if you take that step, you'll find out something incredible. Healing is not just for you. When you heal, you give permission for others to believe they can too. There's someone watching you right now, silently wondering if they'll ever be whole again. And when they see you standing, smiling, and living again, they'll realize that their story isn't over either. Your healing becomes a testimony. Your release becomes a roadmap, and your triumph becomes their hope. It's like Steve Jobs, fired from the very company he built, publicly humiliated and cast aside by the industry he helped shape. Most people would have shrunk back into bitterness. But Jobs called that period the most creative period of my life. He started new ventures, expanded his vision, and years later, walked back into Apple. Not as the man they fired, but as the man they needed. That's what happens when you refuse to let a painful chapter be your final chapter. That's what happens when you let the fire refine you instead of consume you. You might not be a tech visionary or a billionaire entrepreneur, but your comeback matters just as much in the eyes of God. Because heaven measures greatness not by profit margins or bestseller lists, but by the courage to rise when you've been knocked down. Healing and release are not luxuries. They are necessities if you're going to step into the fullness of what God has for you. So I'm asking you right now, what are you still holding on to that's poisoning your future? Whose voice is still echoing in your head, telling you you'll never make it? What moment in time have you built an altar to, revisiting it over and over as if bowing to the memory could change the outcome? It's time to burn those altars. It's time to declare, I release it. I forgive it. I'm done carrying it. And when you say that, mean it. Not just with your lips, but with your choices. This is not denial. This is not pretending it didn't hurt. This is choosing to no longer let the hurt have the final say. This is choosing to no longer dress your wounds in bitterness and call it strength. Real strength is showing up healed. Real strength is refusing to let the person who hurt you have a permanent seat at the table of your life. And I want you to remember this. Your release is also your rebirth. the moment you let go, the moment you heal, you are stepping into a version of yourself that pain never wanted you to meet. You're meeting the you who laughs freely again, the you who dreams without fear, the you who believes that love, trust, and joy are still possible. And when that version of you walks into a room, you're going to shift the atmosphere. There are people who will only know freedom because they saw you live it. There are chains that will fall off of others because they saw yours hit the ground. You don't need to announce it with trumpets. Your life will be the announcement. Your peace will be the evidence. Your joy will be the sermon. So let today be the day you declare it. Let today be the day you say, no more. No more letting the past sit in the driver's seat. No more rehearsing the pain like a script you can't forget. No more giving more attention to what's behind you than what's in front of you. Because what's ahead, oh, it's greater than anything you've lost. And when you get there, when you walk in the fullness of that healing, you're going to realize something powerful. You didn't just survive the fire. You learned how to shine in it. You didn't just escape the pit. You climbed out with treasures in your hands, treasures of resilience, faith, and unshakable hope. That's the victory God has for you. And that's the victory someone else is waiting to see. So heal. Release. And watch how God turns your trauma into triumph, not just for you, but for everyone your life will touch. Remember about Psalm 23:5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. This isn't just a beautiful verse. It's a prophetic promise. When God restores you, He doesn't do it in secret. He doesn't patch you up in the shadows and hope no one notices. No. He prepares a table, and not just anywhere, right in the presence of your enemies. That means there's coming a moment in your life. Not when you fight harder, not when you figure it all out, but when God Himself steps in and says, enough. And suddenly, the very ground where you wept, where you were broken, becomes the place where He sets the table, a table of honor, a table of evidence, a table they can't ignore. Those who doubted you, dismissed you, even tried to break you, they won't just hear about it. They'll see it with their own eyes. You've been through seasons where it felt like everything you built was taken from you, where you poured out your strength, your faith, your heart, only to watch things crumble. But the God who called you is the God who restores. And when He restores, He does it in a way that leaves no doubt that it was His hand. Think about Job. Scripture tells us in Job 42:10, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Twice. That's not just getting back what was lost. That's divine multiplication. That's God saying, I saw your endurance, I saw your pain, and now I'm going to write the ending myself. And here's the part most people miss. Restoration is never just about you. It's about the legacy that flows through you. When Solomon prayed for wisdom, God didn't just give him understanding to judge rightly. He gave him wealth, honor, and peace on every side. Why? Because God knew Solomon's influence would reach nations. Your restoration is not for you to sit back and say, I made it. Your restoration is an assignment. It's the beginning of a generational shift. Some of you have been called to break cycles. You've seen patterns in your family, poverty, brokenness, fear, shame, passed down like heirlooms that nobody wanted, but nobody knew how to get rid of. God is raising you up as the one who says, "It ends with me." And when God puts that kind of calling on your life, He equips you with more than enough to make it happen. Not just spiritual strength, not just emotional resilience, but resources, wisdom, connections, everything you need to plant something that will outlive you. See, wealth, both material and spiritual, was never meant to be a trophy. It's a tool. David understood this. He had victories, he had riches. But when it came to the temple of God, David didn't say, "That's for the next king to handle." He prepared. He stored up gold, silver, cedar, materials so abundant that Solomon could build without lack. David knew that what God placed in his hands wasn't just for his lifetime, but for the generations after him. That's the mindset God is calling you into. Your restoration is not just about recovering what you lost. It's about building something that stands long after you're gone. And here's the beauty. When God restores, He restores in layers. First, He heals the heart. He mends the places where trust was broken, where hope was shattered. Then He renews your mind, giving you fresh vision, fresh faith, fresh boldness. And then, when your heart and mind are aligned with His purpose, He places in your hands the tangible blessings that reflect His goodness. The wisdom to lead, the resources to build, the influence to speak and be heard. Some of you are in the heart healing stage right now. You're not asking for a table in front of your enemies. You're just trying to breathe again. You're saying, "God, I don't need the spotlight. I just want my peace back." And here's what you need to know. God is doing it all, but He's doing it in divine order. He knows that you can't carry the weight of your calling while your heart is still bleeding. So before He sets the table, He's restoring you from the inside out, quietly, gently, completely. Others of you have already walked through the inner healing, and now you're seeing God open doors you didn't even knock on. That's the beginning of your table being set. That's the moment when the same people who said you wouldn't make it have to watch you thrive. But here's the test. When you sit at that table, will you use what's in front of you to bless yourself only, or will you feed the ones who are hungry for hope? Because divine inheritance is not a private feast. It's a public commission, and God will entrust more to the hands that give more. That's why some people plateau. They think the blessing is the finish line. But in God's kingdom, blessing is the starting point for a new assignment. Think about this. What would happen if Job, after receiving double, decided to live in isolation, guarding his wealth and refusing to share? His restoration would have been reduced to a personal comfort instead of a public testimony. But the reason Job's story still inspires thousands of years later is because his restoration glorified God, not himself. You might not feel like a Solomon or a David right now. You might still feel like the before picture of Job, scraping wounds, wondering why. But I'm telling you, there will come a moment when God turns the page. And when He does, you will look back and realize every tear watered the ground for your harvest. Every loss cleared space for something greater. Every no prepared you for a better yes. So, let me ask you, what will you do with your restoration? Will it end with you, or will it outlive you? Will your children and grandchildren inherit just your possessions? Or will they inherit your faith, your resilience, your vision? Because the truth is, cycles are broken not just by what you give, but by what you teach. You can hand someone wealth, but if you don't hand them wisdom, that wealth will vanish. That's why Solomon's first request mattered. He didn't ask for gold. He asked for understanding, and God gave him both and more. That's the pattern. Seek the wisdom first, and the wealth will follow. And that's where legacy begins. Legacy is not about being remembered. It's about making sure what God started in you keeps moving when you're gone. It's making sure your restoration becomes someone else's foundation. It's saying, I went through the fire so my children wouldn't have to start from the ashes. Some of you need to hear this. You are the answer to someone else's prayer. There are generations coming after you who will walk in freedom because you decided to endure. Your restoration is not a random blessing. It's a baton being placed in your hand. And how you run with it will determine how far it goes. Don't minimize what God is doing in your life because it doesn't look flashy yet. David was gathering temple materials long before the temple existed. People may have wondered, why store all this gold? Why stack up all this cedar? But David knew, vision always comes before visibility. You prepare now so that when the time comes, there's no scrambling, no shortage. God is giving you both the vision and the provision. And when those two meet, that's when legacy is born. That's when cycles are broken for good. That's when the blessing stops being something you talk about and becomes something you pass on. You've waited. You've endured. You've been faithful in seasons when it would have been easier to give up. And now, God is not just bringing you back. He's bringing you back better, stronger, wiser, equipped, anointed, and ready to set the table not just for yourself, but for everyone He's called you to serve. Stay with me, because what comes next might be the moment something in your spirit suddenly stirs and says, This is why I'm here. You may not be standing on a grand stage. You may not wear a crown like Queen Esther. But that doesn't make this moment any less sacred. Because just like Esther, you've been placed right where you are, not by chance, but by divine intention. This is your for such a time as this moment. You didn't stumble into this season. You were planted here on purpose, for a purpose, by the hand of God, long before you even understood what you carried inside. There's a shift that happens when you awaken to your destiny. It's like suddenly realizing the storm you've been walking through wasn't designed to destroy you. It was designed to reveal you. Every closed door, every betrayal, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, it was part of the positioning. And when that realization hits, something inside you stands taller. Your voice steadies. Your spirit stops trembling. You begin to walk, not like a victim who barely survived, but like a chosen vessel carrying an assignment from heaven. But here's what you need to understand. The moment you awaken, the enemy awakens too. The moment light bursts forth in your spirit, darkness takes notice. It will send resistance. It will stir up opposition. It will try to distract you, intimidate you, pull you back into old fears, because darkness fears your awakening. It fears the moment you finally see who you are in God. It fears the moment you start believing you are capable of changing the atmosphere in your home, in your workplace, in your city. Because once you believe it, you will act on it. And once you act on it, heaven moves with you. Esther had to understand this. She didn't wake up one morning with courage already burning in her bones. She heard the call that said, "This is why you're here." And she had a choice. She could shrink back in fear, or she could step into the destiny God placed before her. And that choice is the same one you're standing in right now. You can let the weight of what's against you define you, or you can let the weight of what's inside you carry you forward. And here's the truth. When you step into that destiny, when you choose to obey God, no matter the risk, you are not stepping in alone. Heaven moves to guard you. You may not see it with your eyes, but the word says it plainly. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Notice it doesn't say the weapon won't form, it will. The enemy will draw it. People may speak against you. Plans may be plotted. Traps may be set. But none of it will prosper, because you are surrounded by divine protection. Picture it. The King of Kings has assigned angels to you. Not in theory, not in a poetic metaphor. Literally, angels. They walk beside you when you're afraid. They stand guard at your door when you sleep. They go ahead of you into rooms you haven't entered yet, preparing the way, shifting the atmosphere. And when darkness tries to close in, those angels draw their swords. That is the covering you carry as a child of God. But you need to understand, protection is not the same as the absence of pressure. Esther still had to walk into the throne room. She still had to face the king without knowing if he would receive her or reject her. You will still face situations where your heart pounds in your chest and your knees feel weak. But divine protection means that no matter the outcome in the natural, in the spiritual, you are untouchable until your assignment is complete. Some of you listening right now, you've been wondering why the opposition in your life suddenly got louder. You've been asking, why now? Why all at once? And I want to tell you, it's because something inside you has awakened, and the enemy knows time is short. He knows you are about to step into something that will shift your entire family line. He knows you are about to pray prayers that will break chains off people you haven't even met yet. He knows you're about to speak words that will heal, restore, and rebuild. So he's trying to hit you before you get started. But here's what he can't change. You are already chosen. You are already covered. And you are already equipped. You are standing in an Esther moment. And just like she was given favor with the king, you have favor with the King of Kings. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to earn it. It's already been granted. This awakening isn't just about realizing your purpose. It's about realizing your authority. You are not operating under your own name. You are walking under the name of Jesus. That means when you speak His word, darkness has to back up. When you declare His promises, chains have to fall. When you step into the assignment, heaven's resources back you up. You're not walking in wishful thinking. You're walking in covenant. Now let me tell you this. An Esther moment isn't comfortable. It will stretch you. It will demand that you trust God in ways you've never had to before. It will push you into rooms you thought were too big for you. It will cause you to speak when you would rather stay silent. But it will also reveal that the same God who called you is the same God who keeps you. Some of you have been living in the shadows, afraid to fully step into the light because you think you're not ready. But I want you to hear me. God does not wait for you to feel ready. He calls you while you still feel small, so that when you step into victory, there is no question who gets the glory. That's why Paul said, His power is made perfect in weakness. Because your weakness is the very place God will display His strength. So if you feel unqualified, good. If you feel outnumbered, perfect. If you feel like the odds are stacked against you, you are exactly where you need to be. because that's the kind of ground God loves to work with. Ground that looks impossible, so that when the breakthrough comes, the only explanation is Him. You are stepping into a moment that will require faith, courage, and obedience all at once. And when you step, know this: angels will move, doors will open, favor will flow, and no weapon will succeed. You are not walking toward defeat. You are walking into destiny. And maybe, like Esther, you're standing at a crossroads. Maybe God is calling you to do something that feels risky. Maybe He's asking you to stand up for someone who has no voice. Maybe He's placing you in a position where you can shift the outcome for an entire community. But it will require you to put your reputation, your comfort, maybe even your safety on the line. This is not the time to shrink back. This is the time to remember, you were born for such a time as this. Don't let fear talk you out of it. Don't let the noise of opposition drown out the still, steady voice of God. Don't let the enemy's threats make you forget the promises that cover you. When God calls you, He doesn't just point to the path, He walks it with you. And every step you take in obedience becomes a declaration to the spiritual realm. I am here on assignment, and heaven is backing me up. So walk like you know you're chosen. Speak like you know your words carry weight. Pray like you know the atmosphere is shifting when you open your mouth. Live like you know angels are surrounding you, guarding every side. This is your Esther moment. And once you step into it, nothing, no threat, no lie, no weapon, no darkness can take it from you. Because the God who placed you here is the same God who will see you through. And the moment you awaken to that truth, you will never walk the same way again. When God transforms your life, He never intends for that light to stop with you. No. When His hand pulls you out of darkness, when His grace restores what was broken, when His love fills the empty places in your soul, He is also commissioning you. You are not just being healed for yourself. You are being prepared to carry hope into places where hope has died. You are being positioned to guide and inspire those who are still searching for a way out. The same God who met you in the pit now sends you to the edge of someone else's pit, so you can reach down and say, I know the way. Follow me. There's life up here. That is spiritual responsibility. Jesus Himself said in Matthew 5:14, You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. He did not say you might be the light, or that some of you could be the light. He declared it. It's a truth about your identity, not an optional calling you can pick up or put down. And when God gives you light, it's not for you to tuck it away in a drawer. It's meant to shine boldly, openly, unapologetically. Because someone out there is walking through a night so deep, they need the beam of your testimony to guide them home. You see, light is not only about brightness, it's about direction. In ancient times, travelers depended on the glow of a city on a hill to know where safety was. Sailors fixed their course by the light of a lighthouse so they could avoid the rocks and make it safely to shore. In the same way, God places you in someone's line of sight so they can see what life looks like when He steps in. That's not just a compliment, it's a holy assignment. Look at Moses. God didn't bring him out of Pharaoh's house, send him into the wilderness, and call him from the burning bush just to enjoy his own freedom. No. God raised Moses to be a leader, to stand before Pharaoh and declare, "Let my people go." Moses was the visible instrument God used to lead an entire nation out of bondage. Leadership in God's kingdom is not about titles or thrones. It's about service, sacrifice, and example. People will follow your voice only if they can trust your life. They'll look for a consistency between your words and your walk. Moses didn't just preach freedom. He lived through the process of being freed himself. That authenticity gave power to his leadership. And that's what the world needs now. Leaders whose authority comes from experience, not ego. Leaders who can stand and say, "I've been where you are. I've wrestled with doubt. I've fought fear. I've faced giants, and I've watched God bring victory." When you live that way, your testimony isn't just a story. It becomes a map for somebody else's journey. But let me tell you this. Being a light is not always easy. The brighter you shine, the more resistance you'll face. Darkness doesn't retreat quietly. When you step up to encourage others, when you stand in faith for someone else's breakthrough, you will be tested. That's why Isaiah 41:10 speaks so directly to the heart of a servant leader. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." God doesn't send you into the world to shine on your own power. He holds you steady, even when storms rage around you. I want you to picture this. When you step into the calling to be a light, you become a living signpost pointing toward God's goodness. Some will be drawn to that light. Others will try to put it out. Some will thank you for the guidance. Others will resent the truth your life exposes. But your mission remains the same. Keep shining. Don't dim yourself to fit someone's comfort zone. Don't hide your story because you're afraid of judgment. Somebody's breakthrough is on the other side of your obedience. And you don't have to be perfect to be a light. In fact, it's often the cracks in your life that allow God's light to shine through the brightest. People aren't looking for flawless. They're looking for real. They want to see that God can use a person who still has scars, who still bears the marks of battles fought and won. Every scar tells someone, "I've been through it, and God brought me out." Think of Peter, bold, flawed, quick to speak, quick to stumble, but also quick to repent. Jesus still chose him to feed his sheep, to lead the early church, to preach at Pentecost where thousands came to faith. Why? Because Peter's life showed that God's grace could turn even the most impulsive fisherman into a fisher of men. That's light. That's influence born from transformation. Now some of you are thinking, "But I'm not a preacher, I'm not a leader, I'm not on a stage." Let me tell you, being a light is not confined to pulpits or platforms. It happens at your kitchen table, in the break room at work, in the quiet conversations with your children, in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. The mission beyond self is about living in such a way that your presence makes it easier for others to believe in God's presence. It means when people see your patience in chaos, they wonder, where does that peace come from? When they hear kindness in your voice, after you've been wronged, they ask, what keeps them from lashing out? When they watch you keep showing up day after day, even when life is heavy, they begin to believe in a strength beyond human strength. That's the power of example. It preaches without a microphone. It ministers without a schedule. It impacts without a single spotlight. Let's be honest. There will be days you don't feel like shining. Days when your own troubles make you want to crawl back into the shadows. But it's often on those very days that God uses you most. Because when you shine from a place of weakness, when you offer hope while still waiting on your own miracle, that's when people see it's not you, It's Him in you. That's when your life becomes a testimony of His sustaining power. And understand this: being a light doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you know where to point people to find them. You don't have to solve every problem, but you can walk alongside someone until they find the one who can. You may not have the power to heal, but you can introduce them to the healer. You may not be able to calm every storm, but you can guide them to the one who speaks peace over waves and winds. The mission beyond self also requires humility, because the light is not ours, it's His. We're just the vessels. The lamp doesn't get the glory, the fire inside it does. Our role is to stay connected to the source, to keep our hearts aligned with His word, to stay filled with His Spirit. That's the only way to keep shining in a world that will try to wear you down. And here's a truth I need you to take with you. You don't know who's watching. You don't know whose life is shifting because of the way you carry yourself. You may never hear the thank you. You may never see the tears you helped wipe away. You may never know the full reach of your obedience. But heaven keeps the record. And one day, when the work is done, you'll hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So I ask you, what kind of light are you willing to be? A flicker that fades when the wind blows? Or a steady flame that refuses to be put out? Will you shine only when it's convenient? Or will you stand tall when the night is at its darkest? Because right now, somebody is looking for the glow of your faith to guide them home. And if you hide it, they may never find the path. Jesus called you the light of the world for a reason. Not so you could feel proud, but so you could feel responsible. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, and a follower of Christ cannot shrink back when the world needs hope. Your mission is bigger than your comfort. It's bigger than your schedule. It's bigger than your plans. It is the reason God allowed you to survive what you've survived, so that your life could become a beacon for someone else's survival. And if you ever feel unqualified, remember this: God does His best work through those who know they can't do it alone. He will strengthen you. He will help you. He will uphold you with His righteous right hand. You are not carrying this light in your own strength. You are carrying it in His. That's why you won't burn out. That's why you won't give up. That's why the mission will be completed. Because it's His mission and you're His vessel. So keep shining in the workplace, in your home, in your community, in your church, in the moments nobody sees, and in the moments everyone is watching. Shine so bright that even the shadows start to lose their grip. Shine so consistently that people know where to look when they lose their way. Shine until the day you step into the presence of the one who is the true light, and you see His face smile back at you. That's the mission beyond self, and it starts right where you are. My friend, did you feel deep in your spirit that you were standing on the edge of something bigger than yourself? That the season you are walking into is not just another chapter, but the moment where everything begins to align, the gifts you've carried, the lessons you've endured, the prayers you've whispered in the quiet? This is not just a dream. This is the season of your expansion. And it's not coming from human hands. It's coming from the one who called you before the foundation of the world. In this season, your gifts are not just going to grow. They're going to multiply. The insight you've been praying for is going to run deeper, sharper, clearer than ever before. The blessings you've been waiting for are not going to drip in slowly. They're going to pour out in ways that make you stop, look around, and realize God has been planning this all along. You see, when the Lord expands you, He's not just giving you more. He's enlarging your capacity to carry it. He's stretching you so that what once felt impossible now feels like destiny. And here's the truth. You can stop worrying about what you might lose. You can stop looking over your shoulder, wondering if someone else can take it from you. Because what God ordains, no obstacle can remove. What heaven has written over your life cannot be erased by human hands. No amount of delay, no voice of doubt, no wall of resistance can shut a door that God Himself has opened. You may have been through seasons where everything felt fragile, where it seemed like at any moment the ground could give way beneath you. But this is not that season. This is a season of rootedness, where you rise with a confidence that does not come from your own strength, but from the unshakable truth that the author of your story has already declared the ending. Think about how far you've come. Think about the nights you wanted to give up, and yet, here you are. Think about the times you thought the dream was dead, and yet, it kept breathing inside of you. That wasn't an accident. That was God sustaining you for such a time as this. Every tear you cried in private has been watering the ground you're about to walk on. Every disappointment you endured was pruning you for fruit you couldn't see yet. Every closed door was a divine redirection towards something greater than you imagined. So now the question is, will you step fully into it? Will you embrace the destiny that's been whispering to you in the quiet moments when no one else was watching? Because stepping into purpose isn't just about receiving blessings. It's about becoming the person who can steward them. It's about walking into rooms you once thought were too big for you. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet, steady confidence of someone who knows they were sent. And yes, there will still be voices of doubt inside you and around you. There will still be moments where fear tries to convince you that you're not ready. But you've got to remember, fear is not a prophecy. It's a thief. It wants to rob you of the courage to move forward. It wants you to settle for what is safe instead of reaching for what is sacred. Don't give it that power. Not now. Not in this season where God is expanding you beyond the limits you thought defined you. I want you to picture it. You walking with your head lifted, shoulders back, eyes fixed. Not because life is perfect, but because you know who walks with you. You know the assignment. You know the anointing on your life. You're not waiting for someone to validate you. You're not asking permission to be who God already said you are. You are here to live in the fullness of the calling that has been on your name since before you took your first breath. This is not a small thing. When you step fully into your purpose, you don't just change your own life. You shift the atmosphere for everyone connected to you. Your obedience creates ripples. Your courage gives someone else permission to believe again. Your breakthrough opens doors for others to walk through. And that is why the enemy fought you so hard. Because he knew if you ever reached this place, you wouldn't just rise alone, you'd take others with you. So hear me when I say this. You are ready. You've been prepared in the hidden places, forged in the fire, strengthened in the storms. And now, God is saying, it's time. No more playing small. No more shrinking to fit into spaces you've outgrown. No more letting fear dictate the size of your faith. Step forward. Step higher. Step into the life that's been waiting for you to say yes. And when you do it with gratitude. Remember the road it took to get here. Remember the prayers that carried you. Remember the grace that never let you go. And let that gratitude keep you humble, even as God elevates you. Because this expansion, it's not just for your comfort, it's for His glory. You are a vessel, and the more He fills you, the more you pour out to a world that desperately needs what you carry. This is your moment. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are perfectly positioned. And when you walk in alignment with God's purpose, you don't have to chase what's yours. It will meet you on the path. The blessings, the opportunities, the divine connections, they are already on their way. All you have to do is keep moving forward with open hands, a willing heart, and the unshakable belief that your destiny is secure in Him. So go ahead, rise, step fully into the calling, live in the overflow. Because your season of expansion is here, and nothing, no one, can take away what God has ordained for your life. Let's bring this home in the same spirit we've been carrying since the first word. A spirit of truth, of love, of conviction. You have walked through this message not as a passive listener, but as someone who has been reminded of who you are in God. You are not empty-handed. You are equipped. You are not exposed. You are protected. And you are not weak. You are capable, because the one who called you has already given you every tool, every weapon, and every ounce of strength you need for the battles ahead. The enemy may try to whisper otherwise, but you have been marked by heaven, sealed with the promise of victory. You've been through valleys that should have broken you, storms that should have drowned you, nights so dark you thought you'd never see light again. But here you are, still breathing, still standing, still holding on. That's not by chance. That's the hand of God on your life. That's His covering over your mind, His grace holding you together, His mercy renewing you every morning. Don't you dare let fear or doubt convince you that you are unprepared. You are more ready than you realize, because God's preparation often happens in the hidden seasons, away from applause, away from recognition. Now is the time to step out knowing that heaven stands with you. When you walk into the room, you carry the presence of the King. When you face the challenge, you carry the authority of His name. And when you pray, all of heaven leans in to listen. You don't fight for victory. You fight from victory, because Jesus already won the war. That means every single day you wake up, you start from a position of power, not defeat. And I want you to hear this. Your story is still being written. God hasn't placed you here just to survive. He's called you to influence, to inspire, to lead, to love, to be light in a world that's grown far too comfortable in the dark. Your words matter. Your prayers matter. Your obedience matters. Someone's breakthrough is waiting on your yes to God. So as we prepare to pray, I want you to make this moment personal. Picture laying every fear, every worry, every burden at His feet. Imagine the weight leaving your shoulders as His peace begins to flood your heart. Let this prayer not just be words you hear, but a confession you take ownership of, a declaration that you will live covered, equipped, and ready. Now, let's begin praying together. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come before you with hearts full of gratitude. Thank you for reminding us today of who we are in you. Thank you for the protection that surrounds us like a shield. for the strength that rises in us even when we feel weak, for the wisdom that guides us when the path is unclear. Lord, we surrender our fears, our doubts, and our uncertainties into your hands. Replace them with courage, with clarity, and with unshakable faith. We declare that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against us shall fall. We stand on your promises, knowing that you are our refuge and fortress. Father, strengthen us to walk boldly into the calling you've placed on our lives. Let our light shine so others may see you through us. Protect our families, guide our decisions, and align our steps with your perfect will. We seal this prayer in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. My dear friend, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to say thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. I pray that as you leave this moment, you carry with you a renewed faith, a steady courage, and an unshakable connection to the one who called you. May God bless your steps, cover your home with peace, and surround your days with joy. Until we meet again, keep walking in your purpose. Keep trusting in His timing, and never forget, you are chosen, you are loved, and your best is still ahead. And if this message stirred something in you, if it lit a fire in your heart, or helped you see yourself differently, I want you to do 3 meaningful things, like this video, to let the light keep spreading. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what God is revealing next. And drop a comment below. Share the moment that struck your spirit. Or just write, "I've been marked, I'm chosen." If you were truly awakened today, I want to hear it from you. This community is growing, and your voice matters here. Until we meet again, stay rooted in truth, stay anchored in grace, and never forget, you don't need to chase approval when you've already been appointed. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next message.